Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about how to find missing sides and angles of quadrilaterals using those properties we talked about in the last video. So the first big thing to remember is that the interior angles of a quadrilateral are always going to add up to 360 degrees. So you can kind of see an example here, right? If I take all those little angles and I put them together, they're going to be 360, just like a full circle. So we can also use the properties that we already know to help us find those missing sides and angles. So how are we going to do this? Well, we are going to identify what shape we have. We're going to write down what we know about the angles or the sides, whatever we're looking for, and we're going to use those properties to find those missing measurements. So shape number one, we have a trapezoid, right? We've got one set of parallel sides. It looks like an isosceles trapezoid, but we don't have those markings, so we can't necessarily say that it's isosceles quite yet. In this trapezoid, we are looking for that missing angle. So we know that trapezoids are quadrilaterals, and we know that the interior angles of quadrilaterals always add up to 360. So how does that help us? Well, I've got 3 angles out of the 4, right? So I know they all need to add up to 360. So I'm going to start with 360, and I'm going to subtract the 3 angles that we know. And whatever's left has to be the measure of angle x. And when we do that, we get 105 degrees. So this measure of angle x is 105. Some people like to add up the angles first and then subtract, so you could also do 75 plus 75 plus 105 and then subtract from 360. Either way, you're going to get the same answer. Let's try another shape. So looking at this one, we know those opposite sides are parallel, the opposite sides are congruent, so this is a parallelogram. Parallelograms have a lot of properties, but today we're specifically looking at these 2 angles that we're looking for. So parallelograms, we know that the opposite angles are congruent. Another property of parallelograms angles is that adjacent angles are always going to add up to 180 degrees. So let's see how those 2 properties help us find those missing angles. Let's start with the first one. Opposite angles are congruent. If I know that this angle is 51, I know that the opposite angle, x, also has to be 51 degrees. So x is 51. Now, adjacent angles are next to each other, right? So 51 and y are adjacent to each other. They're next to each other, where 51 and x were opposite. So I know that these 2 angles together have to add to 180. So similarly to what we just did above with our quadrilateral, we're going to do 180 minus that 51. And we get that that missing angle is going to be 129 degrees. All right, let's take a look at another one. So this shape right here we can see is a rectangle. We've got those opposite sides are equal, and we know that those are those 90-degree angles is what makes it look like a rectangle. So our shape is a rectangle. And this time we're looking for a missing side length. So we know that rectangles are parallelograms, and we know that they always have their opposite sides are congruent. That means that if we are looking for x, the opposite side is 8.5. So that means that x also has to be 8.5 centimeters. Okay, let's keep going. Next up, all right, so we've got another parallelogram. We've got those opposite sides are parallel and congruent. And this time we're looking for one side length and one angle measure. So again, we know that opposite sides are congruent, and we know that opposite angles are congruent. So let's take a look at that side x first. So if x is this side up here, we're looking at that opposite side, which is 13 inches. So we know that x also has to be 13 inches. Now looking at those angles, right, I'm looking at angle y. The angle opposite is 55. So we know that measure of angle y is also 55 degrees. All right, last one for this video. We've got a rhombus, and we know it's a rhombus because it says so in the problem. We are looking for a side length, and so what do we know about the sides of rhombus? We know that they are all equal. So if I know that the distance around the rhombus is 124, or another way to say the perimeter is 24, what's the measure of one side? If I know that all 4 sides are equal, and I know the whole way around is 124, then if I take that 124 and I divide it by those 4 equal sides, I'm going to get that missing side length. And when I do that, I get that each side is going to be 31. So each one of those sides is 31 centimeters. All right, so hopefully we are feeling more comfortable with using those properties of quadrilaterals to solve for missing sides and angles. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.